In the late 1980s, a meteor flashed across the skies of San Francisco's cultural landscape. That meteor is our next guest, the unbelievable Justin Vivian Bond. Justin, how are you?
I'm divine. Thank you. I think that's the first time I've been called Meteor.
Meteor? Well, there you go. Well, you can take
Or
it.
a meteor.
A meteor. Put it on a plaque next to your door.
I will. I like that.
But I know you've been called divine before.
Well, I've called myself divine.
Now, for those who have not been lucky enough to see you on stage, tell us how you created Justin Vivian Bond. I remember seeing you on stage the first time in the late 1980s and said, that's a unique talent.
Well, I'm sort of like an onion. I cause tears. I just keep peeling things away. Tears come out. Crazy, insane characters come out. I'm still trying to find get to the core of Justin, but I think that's part of what my art is about.
Right.
And I think that that's why I stay interested in it. And I think that, maybe that's why people are interested in me, because, it's an evolution. I think a lot of people do things as performers or artists or people, and they kind of get into a comfortable space with it, and then they just don't change it because that's what people expect of them, and they're kind of used to dealing with people in that way. And I guess, fortunately, I have what my mother calls more guts than brains, because I just keep moving,
Well, I mean, certainly no one would ever say that you've been in a rut as far as your entertainment career. I mean, you've had more costume changes and more, I want to say second acts, because it's been one long first act for you, but a lot of changes, more than Cher, maybe.
I doubt that. Definitely not more than Cher. I mean, she's had changes in a lot more areas than I have. And we don't need to go into all of them, but I guess so. I mean, the funny thing is my second act sort of is what I would consider my first act, because my first sort of big major cultural thing, I mean, not major in the cultural world of queerness and showbiz, was Kiki and Herb. And in that I was playing an old woman who was definitely on a comeback. Kiki and Herb were sort of has-beens. And so when I stopped doing Kiki, people were amazed to find out that I was so much younger than they thought I was, and yet now I'm sort of starting the sort of another phase of my career as a sort of up-and-comer in new areas, and I'm very old to be an up-and-comer, so I like it. I've sort of like flipped it on its axis.
Well, now before you were Justin, and then you were, before that, Kiki and Herb, where did you start? Where did this wonderful entertainer, Justin, start in childhood?
Well, I was born Stanley Huffman Bond III in Hagerstown, Maryland, and I was never called Stanley. And then I was called Chip, and I didn't really want to be, I don't want this to sound ageist or homophobic, but I did not want to be an old gay man named Chip. And so I had to change that, and then I went for Justin because I thought it was the beige of names, and my mom always said you should go through for something neutral if you want to be comfortable with it, because you're going to have to stick with it for a long time. Don't go with anything too flashy. And then, of course, I became known as Kiki, and I had Justin was my professional name, but most people knew me as Kiki. So by the time I decided I was ready to sort of move on, people were calling me Justin again. I said, well, I can't change the Justin. I'm just going to add the Vivian, so that there's a more of a broader palette for people to engage with me on, and for me as far as personal expression, because that's my name, that's who I am, not a character.
Now, you talk about your mother, so your mother's still around. How does your mother appreciate the performer that is Justin Vivian Bond?
Well, it's been an evolution for her, but she's doing pretty well these
Hagerstown, I'm
days.
from Richmond, Virginia, so
right,
Hagerstown.
It's very similar, I'm sure. Some of my best friends were from outside of Richmond. My very best friend when I was a kid moved to our neighborhood from outside of Richmond. So, I know a little bit about
the area.
That area, yes. But she's doing pretty good, I mean, she's getting used to calling me V. And so she's aware of it, and she seems to be making an effort, which is, very nice. And so right now, everything seems to be pretty good. Sometimes it's one step forward, two steps back, and I get very upset. But, she's been around for a long time.
Yeah. Now, has she come out and visited here in San Francisco?
She did when I lived here. She
Yeah,
came.
I was about to say, because now I consider you a San Franciscan, because we came to this wonderful City by the Bay in the late 80s, around the same time. But now you've gone to become, without exaggeration, an international name. You've toured.
I've toured, yes. Well, I came here in 1988 and I left in 1994, but I still consider San Francisco to be my spiritual home. More specifically, I consider Cafe Flor to be my spiritual home.
Isn't it the center of the universe?
It's where I became who I am. It was during the late 80s, early 90s. I worked at A Different Light when it was a very radical queer bookstore on Castro Street. And I became a queer performer. I started doing all these amazing shows, meeting people, realizing that I didn't have to figure out how to convince people that I was straight in order to have a career, which never, ever, ever, ever would have worked. And so I became myself here. So it is my spiritual home. So even though I haven't lived here for a long time, I come back several times a year, and I consider it to be the only city in the world where there are multiple households where I would feel perfectly comfortable going for Christmas or Thanksgiving.
Right.
And
now,
feel, family is here.
Well, I mean, family is, there were some people try to make fun of quote unquote San Francisco family values, but here people can be who they are. They can be David, they can be Justin, they can be V. They don't have to be gay, bisexual, transgender, or whatever. They can just be. You mentioned Cafe Flor. You said that was important to your cultural identity. Talk about that.
Well, it was a place where a lot of people would meet up at the time that I lived there. And of course, I was free during the afternoon. So I would, and I was young and I was broke. My friend Daniel Nardicchio, who's gone on to become a big nightclub and theatrical presenter in New York, we were both met here right when we moved here, and we used to refer to our money as cups of coffee. How many cups of coffee do you have? I've got 5. Okay, I've got 3. So between us, we've got 8. We can be there for a while. So we go and sit at Cafe Flor from like 4 o'clock in the afternoon till 10 o'clock in the evening and use our 8 cups of coffee and, flirt with people, meet people. I made all my friends there. I'd sit there at the Queen's table in the corner. And then, of course, all the people would come in and talk about ACT UP and Queer Nation and what political actions were happening.
It was a unique period and a unique place, Cafe Flor in the 80s.
Very creative, very political. And the people that worked there welcomed us, but the owners sort of remained very neutral about
Mahmoud
all
and
of it, because
Ahmed.
there were, they were lovely. And they had gorgeous baristas, which,
that
totally helped. And so it was this place where people, and the disparate elements of the gay community, those sort of older ones that, resented the younger ones, and just a whole lot of different issues kind of got worked out in that place because we were all there. And I loved it. And I mean, and when I say all there, I mean there were lesbians, there were drag people, there were trans people. I had some of the most amazing, conversations about transgender perspectives and things like that really formed me. So I always go there when I come back to town.
Now, the last time I saw you, you were on stage. My husband took me as a surprise Valentine's gift to see you in Close to You. I think that's the title of it. Dedicated to the music of the Carpenters, which thrilled me because up until that point of seeing the Castro Theater full, I thought I was the only geek that just had every Karen Carpenter album in the world.
Right. It's comforting to know that you're not alone.
Well, were you one too? I mean, why did you pick that? Did you like the Carpenters?
Oh, yeah. Well, when I was a kid, my family used to play softball games every Sunday out in the field by my grandmother's farm, on my grandmother's farm. And, I wanted to play, but I was terrible at it. So one Sunday, I went out and they said, okay, you can play. I was young. I was maybe 6, 7. I struck out. Oh, keep throwing the balls until he hits one. At 16, I would strikeouts. I was crying. My cousins, I can't play. This girl who was very butch, screaming. I was so upset, and so I went inside. My dad said, well, I think you better go inside, son. I was like so mortified. And so I went in, and my cousin was there, my sort of, willowy older cousin with long straight hair. It was the early 70s. She said, do you want to play Barbies? I said, yes, I want to play Barbies. So we sat and played Barbies, and she put on the Close to You album, and I just sort of calmed down. And it was just total acceptance from someone after this very sort of, realization that I was never going to be the boy that they thought that, I should be. And there was someone who's just saying, well, let's just play Barbies and listen to the Carpenters, relax, it's okay. And so, listening to her voice makes me feel that way still.
Yeah, I remember once reading that Barbra Streisand thought that Karen Carpenter had one of the most beautiful voices of the decade.
She did. I mean, you can really, take issue with a lot of the song selections and arrangements.
Yes.
But her voice was beyond beautiful. It was so rich. And of course, there's the whole theory that she became an anorexic because she had a little gender dysphoria herself and worked so hard to become something she wasn't that she eventually died.
Now, you have something that's new coming up this month. There is a new fragrance. Is it called Justin? Is it called Vivian? What?
It's called Afternoon of a Faun.
That's fabulous.
It's inspired by the Gali, who were the ancient priests of the goddess Sybil, the last goddess whose temple was destroyed by the Christians, and her priests and priestesses were gender variant. And I did this show a few years ago about, the sort of femme diaspora of all of us scattered throughout the world, magical creatures, and one of whom I think was Nijinsky, who sort of revolutionized dance and performance with his scandalous interpretation
Afternoon of a Faun, yes.
of the Afternoon of a Faun. So I wanted a scent that smelled a little bit like sex in the afternoon. I go to the fairy sanctuary, and I wanted it to smell like a touch of taint on the knoll at twilight. So it's a little smoky, a little grassy, woodsy, and then a nice floral note.
So it's a little bit like you. It's your scent.
Yes, it is. It's a trans scent for the person who is everything.
And where can someone buy this wonderful scent?
It will be in stores. I'm collaborating with this French company called État Libre d'Orange, and they did Tilda Swinton's fragrance. That's how I met them. And Tom of Finland. And then they have this whole range of scents. They're great. And they sell them at department stores like Bergdorf, I think Bendel's in New York.
Right.
So all over, but you get mine on my website because mine's a special edition. The Afternoon of a Faun will be in every store, but the one that's the mix version, which is mine, which has special packaging, you can get on my website.
Perfect for stocking stuffers this holiday season.
For the person who's everything to you.
Thank you. We've been speaking to the fabulous Justin Bond, and I don't use that word very often. Fabulous. Next up, another entertainer that I'm sure many of you have seen. We'll be speaking with Kurt Branham, longtime cast member of Beach Blanket Babylon. We'll be right back.